Julie here with Sirius Talis Moon. This is Mars, our Jupiter day, and ascendant is 7 degrees Scorpio with Mars and Mercury. Mercury 13 degrees Scorpio, Mars 16 degrees Scorpio. The Moon is 23 degrees Leo and 11 degree Leo midheaven. Sun is with Spica, sextiling the Moon in the 12th house, ruled by Venus, that is separating from trine to Pluto and Uranus. I want to first of all call on Spica because that's going to be needed. Um, Spica and Andromeda. And I want to address something that I got to know by complete chance. Um, after my research in academia basically proved how MK often works and how MK often and MK Ultra are associated. And I say that in retrospective because I didn't know that my essays were all connecting. Okay, I made essay on the housing crisis in Sweden, and the welfare state that was built by the miners, and by having to grant the miners after the Second World War good rights, and the fact that they just didn't build ecosystemically outside the cities and created a black market by design, waiting for the people to ask for liberalization from rights that they are deserving of for the taxes that they pay. And actually, the website of Sweden was back then "In Tax We Trust." And they literally had the mantra "In Tax We Trust" on the website. Um, but there were other streams operating within that. Um, and that prevented, a liberalization of the market without extra housing will not do anything, and creating extra housing prevents the need to further liberalize the housing sector. And I say that without having an exact opinion about whether we should have a liberal housing sector or not, because anyway, both in the liberal and not the liberal, we'll need to take human rights into account. And the same solution. The Rockefellers and Rothschild were funding both sides of the equation. They were funding the Bolsheviks, which later turned commies, and the blacklisting of Bolsheviks by okay by United States after the war, because they knew what every common sense tells you, which is like with human rights you can get to the same solution in socialism, communism, and in capitalism. In both cases, whether it's the people that have the private sector money or the people that have the public sector money, that money needs to do those same ecosystemic buildings outside of the city centers, in which we don't take away from nature, but then increase the housing sector and maintain sexual sovereignty. This is how we prevent accidental babies. Okay, that is embodied sexual. I know that people usually want to have sex around the days that are actually good for conception, um, and sometimes a condom doesn't do the work. Um, but that is still easier than farming, human farms, okay, and those type of trajectories that create that overpopulation, or marrying children and wanting to have as many children in the legacy, while waiting for the children to feed the parents as children rather than the other way around. And those cultures create problems with overpopulation, and then complaining about depopulation where people actually caretake for their children. And this is the next topic, because um, I talked about the use of the myth of psychiatry to create a national identity in Britain. And there are a lot of things that I don't agree that I wrote in this essay. To name a few, yes, I wrote it's a myth because no scientific research has proved the connection between climate and mental ailment. This is completely bogus, okay, scientifically, let alone the deterioration of the race. Um, Again, completely bogus. The Inuit that lived in the cold ice had difficult to build houses enough for the community, and there were increased amount of incest in that community that created susceptibility to addictions and susceptibility to be invaded. And we know the famous Sedna story. where Sedna was literally trafficked for her father to get like demonic powers. It's kind of like the first deal with the devil. Pre-Christianity, pre-Abrahamic religions, and pre-Aztecs and Mayans, and definitely climate has a role in that, whether we like it or not. And this is something we can being informed, we can work with nature in favor of communities rather than against ourselves. So climate affect the housing, which breed incest communities and suicide. Inuits top the suicide. Okay, and they still have food prices, high food prices, um, and also, yes, of course, inbreeding biodiversity creates the elements of inbreeding, um, and of course, inbreeding when in small communities in the isolated regions, of course, there's more inbreeding. So those things absolutely affect mental health. So that was dumb fuckery I wrote in 2015. However, the essence of this, which is basically how the myth of spiritual hygiene and its use by colonial empires as tool of building and preserving a national identity. The British case, so basically British people were vying for the attention that the segregational, the use of hospitals to segregate people in India and classes in India um, in a faraway land created a myth of psychiatry in Britain that strengthened national identity because British wanted to be priding themselves on that myth of psychiatry. Now, Neptune rules psychiatry, myth, faraway lands, isolation, what is real and what is dream. And this is a fantastic, I would say it's a fantastic read, but it's a seminar, and I don't think it's published anywhere other than Ben Gurion Library. Will probably confiscated and burned the books. After they made sure I like they ruined my email, like really horrid stuff. From within the university, by the way, because there's a trafficking ring of MK Ultra as well in the universities, and if Israel helped developing the MK often, then we understand that our academia is not so intellectual. Now, and all of those are made by classified projects. So, by chance, I would later run into that with the case of a psychologist that was in himself mind controlled. It was a very sad case, but also a very life risking case. He had personalities that would try to help, and personalities that would try to target, kill, assassin, rape. And there was this issue of personality calls. Not only that, I worked with my essential oils and I came with a kyanite crystal because I was like, I'm willing for no, like I'm not gonna go into like a psychologist that doesn't accept me with my own methods, and that may have further instigated um, those effects. Okay, if let's say I come when I smell from a certain essential oils, then that would basically spark healing within the person, but then they would get probably tortured so that they would not heal as a therapist because their job was to kidnap the children. So other than treating people that may have had childhood or issues or whatnot, and treating people that had identity-related issues, that person was a diagnostic of the welfare of which children to kidnap, and and then a couple of years after I ran away and still had to deal with being targeted now, and this time this time by something new. um, this time because I ran away from his trafficking cult. Okay, there was another attempt to traffic me. When I said no to the trafficking cult in academia and made a satire about the trafficking cult in academia with a symbol that I thought was just the officer specialties, the IDF, and I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Because so what comes after that is that I get the courage after trauma to seek out the name and see what's happening there Is he jailed? Is he this? Is he that? Now, I don't know if he's jailed or not, but there was a case of a mother that, and this is what the people would do. I want to refer you to what prompted me to talk about that, and this is this lady, Real Talk with Heidi, and she talks about, you call it gang stalking, but it's basically the result of MK Ultra and MK Often. And if you listen to her, she's this very tender, loving, amiable person that has immense clarity within the reality of being gang stalked. And that's basically the people that they look for. It's attacking the light. Now I'm like not any like I get angry, I get this, I get mass global, da, 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 da. But the thing is that my research really does point at the light and point at the truth. And however, yes, however challenging I am as a person, the research that I do is indeed in favor of humanity, which got me to get targeted. And so that is that's true. I mean, I didn't get targeted for my tenderness. Like to be tender, I need to be safe, right? So yeah, and so basically, I ran into a situation where a lot of the therapists would write whatever dumb fuckery they feel like on their patients. And some of that is like, yeah, they have to listen to the people, and it's really annoying, and they take out their rage in the reports or something. And like, as long as it's not used against anyone, nobody cares. And so, but in the case of a mother that was dependent on that report or that opinion, um, why am I saying nobody cares? Because patient sovereignty is number one. Without patient sovereignty, there is no recovery, there is no healing. And this is, for every person that's threatened, oh, we're gonna make of you that you are the crazy person, you are the this, you are the that. Any lawyer will tell you, anybody that threatens you with that, they are the psychopath, they are the sociopath. These diseases are way more difficult, especially way more difficult to treat psychiatrically. They usually are treated in jail psychiatrically or in a psychiatric jail. And that is basically, okay, so for anybody that's threatened in those things, it's actually, I know that from a lawyer. There was a case of a pilot that was befriending a lady that recovered from sexual boundary violation, and she had eating disorders, and she had, her own like depression and stuff like that. And that guy, once she discovered he was cheating, and again, if it was like, if people are non-monogamous, they're non-monogamous, but that should be, discussed. But if she discovered that the guy was cheating, and he threatened her that he will take the children and he will hospitalize her. And then she went to a lawyer, and the lawyer said something very simple. All you really have to do, tell that guy, if I have, I don't know, depression or whatnot, or bipolar or whatnot, then that means you're a sociopath, narcissist, psychopath, which is quite eligible for hospitalization. And that went, and that lady went with telling him, rationalizing him, and saying, okay, you're a pilot, you're working all day, you're going to have to take care of the children yourself if you do that. And aside of the fact that you could be seen as psychopath, sociopath, which would mean that the children would be, they wouldn't be able to be with you, but let's say the children would be with you. Do you really want to have to take care of the children full time? Are you capable of doing that, not just financially, but also in terms of your time and how you're going to do that? And that pretty much calmed the fire down. But that was, again, that was a very scary situation, because that lady had a confidant in the partner, and seen as a pilot, and was really like praising her on how strong she is, and so on and so forth. And I personally know that typecast, okay? And so, and then, suddenly switching, because very likely it was MK Ultra, and very likely that narcissism is also created in torture. But this is where the real dumbfuckery begins. Because back to the story of my ex-psychologist, and look for the story of this woman, and he sexually harassed her in his report. That something was familiar for me from academia, It's something that happened to me and sparked the satire. And I just said I'm going to do a satire. Like, satire is something that is creative, that is an expression that shows the truth about society. And I made a satire about the cult and the use of occultism and the archaic stereotypes about sexuality and like really cool stuff. The satire was completely confiscated, and I believe it's been bootlegged. So what happened is that that lady, that mother that needed her children back, took a lawyer, and suddenly, what happened in this lawyer's life? Suddenly, the lawyer would get divorced, and he would not be able to continue the case. But there was something else that I know very well from that psychologist, is that because he was mind controlled, he was also doing mind control. And mind you, I got a recommendation on him from a lady that her child went to that psychologist, and that lady went through immense amount of abuse and was liable to be so mind controlled that she believed that one of the people, another person that received assistance with housing, suddenly there would be a mess in the apartment, and she believed the people that told her that that person was faking deed. And this is, it's beyond intolerable, and she runs a fund that's supposed to help people to recover, and um, and that is where basically she would be mind controlled so that I would be isolated from being able to file a complaint, and basically there would be dark occult practice done on the people to break them down. So a lot of his patients wouldn't be able to confront that, and the problem and the reason I don't like, oh, what's the name of it's not the name, it's a structure. Those people are at the junctures of recovery, because let's say you take that guy down. Okay, let's say you gun that person down. Okay, gone is that person. Fantastic. We did not kill the structure. They're just gonna put another person. Okay, and that's what we're dealing with, is the dismantling of the structure, not the name calling that placed at the hands of extortion cults. Because yeah, to get a degree to be a psychologist, probably you had to rape a couple of children to camera. Fantastic. So then let's say, but every person that gets a degree has to do that if it's a degree that certifies him to receive money to treat patients at the juncture of where they're kept in those trafficking cults. This is why when I couldn't finish my thesis, I did my thesis proposal, but for writing the thesis there was such dark attacks on me because I wasn't agreeing to traffic people, to agree with, and there was an attempt for my entire first year. There was an attempt to get me to agree with things that the dean did, that was completely human trafficking. Again, somebody that was grieving their father at loss. He was his kind of like confidant, and then he assaulted that person, basically thinking to traffic them, like for the money that they get, whatnot. And one of the people I was a TA of tried to get me to agree with that. And my naive self thought, well, he's probably still going through the trauma of his favorite ideal mentor being accused and found guilty in human trafficking in sexual harassment. It's basically human trafficking in Jerusalem. But these guys, they felt so smug because whenever somebody would complain, they would use dark occult on that person. So we knew very well that all the system is basically pulled against the person who tried to forcibly hospitalize people. Now, my thesis was countering all of that dumbfuckery. So what would happen also with that mother is that dark occult was used against that lawyer. That lawyer would basically become a targeted individual, had to drop the case, and that mother never got her children back. And I made a small post, a satirical post, about the kidnapping of Paz. and it's basically about a mother that kidnaps the children of the psychologist and his spouse, and asks, and then she steals some food. It was actually the food from a restaurant that got famous because of that. So I think IKEA owed me some dividends. The meatballs of IKEA, okay? And she stole some food from IKEA and gave that child. And then the missus of the psychologist is basically saying to the psychologist, can we let the lady babysit our child? And this was basically a lady that the child was taken from her because she was incompatible parent. Um, and then he has to bribe that lady, and the lady says, I have no problem to babysit your child, I'm just going to need food because I want to have to steal food, but also I'm going to need for you to return my child. And that was a problem because her child was already sold to a child trafficking. And that was the post on Facebook. Later I would see Paz Clinic, Paz Frequencies Healing, Paz this, Paz that. And all of these, other than the thing about plagiarism is that they do rape to basically steal life energy from people. And this is yeah, this is how the dumbfuckery got really dumbfuckery. And I want to mention another thing on that regard, because while we have psychologists that are trained to Epstein and kidnap children from parents to make it look like the parent is incompatible, where the parent just very reasonably doesn't trust the system, which indeed creates poverty, which indeed creates challenges of the parent to function as a parent, which indeed, but hey, in places where they have housing first, independent of ability to work, not to separate the children from the parents, this is where people do get recovered. But another thing I want to mention as a side of that is the fact that there's a paradigm called estrangement. And I know that a lot of lawyers capitalize on that paradigm. And indeed, there are many cases where children were taken from their loving parents by the excuse of the parent not being compatible in divorces cases. And that was completely the child going into the parent that is, whether they're good for the child or not, one parent is taken away from the ability to parent, which will harm the child, because however, whatever the child was told to say in court or something like that, then that would harm the child, because the child would expect the parent to fight for it, and if that parent's not successful fighting for it, the child would feel abandoned. Now, aside of those cases, which are indeed compatible with the definition of what people would call estrangement, um, and that is indeed an offense that harms the children, there is also the very real cases where children are ritually abused in their homes and dare to speak. Okay? And this is where the child testimony should be believed. And this is where believing the child testimony comes above on the scale of pretty much anything. Um, because and this is where I disagree with Heidi, where she says, well, a child would feel uncomfortable to talk about a parent that is actually abusive. And while that's not wrong, if a child does speak about the trauma that they went through with a certain parent that was ritually abusive to them, and some children would, then believing that child is important and taking them away from that parent that is probably a part of a ritual cult, because estrangement paradigm was created by a couple of researchers that also were a part of, at the very least, they were harming their child, and very likely that was done as a part of some sort of a dark occult practice. Okay, so this is exactly the dark occult practices that we get the psychologists together with other people in MK often threaten the lawyers that try to protect the mothers from, or the fathers from having their children taken away from them. And because it happens to fathers as well. Okay, fathers, particularly fathers, target individuals are target individuals, particularly fathers that do in that work and in their job are doing something that is repelling corruption. Then they could be targeted for their relationships with their children. Um, to have to be presented is this okay, and those things are really, really complicated. And yet it's important to understand that when a child does speak about some abuse that they went through, believing them is important. However, the welfare, or the place that's supposed to be the emergency place, and this is where that psychologist was also treating children at an emergency center. Um, and this is where the real dumbfuckery begins, because those emergency centers become MK Ultra, MK often trafficking farms by our taxes under classified projects that infiltrate the welfare and so on. And by the way, the only time that I got a woman that was threatened for her life, and she came back to Israel, and by chance we were basically both members in a group that was giving courses of sex positive, even self pleasure, and so on. And the things that the teacher of the course was teaching, it was like if you take a film, there's like 16 pictures moving at a certain rate, then the people that undergone such trauma would be like the fly on the wall that see the flickering light and doesn't get to see continuum. And so I basically broke down that film into the place that was able to create a continuum, was able to connect the flickering lights. And basically I was taking the teachings and I was further embellishing to them to be trauma informed, to people being murder trauma informed. And then with that, basically one of the people managed to heal deep things with them, and they discovered the connection between grief and being susceptible to ritual abuse. There was even something to do with programming there, around the sexuality, that and by the way, even for people that are dominant in their sexuality, they sometimes would be targeted by people, a couple, the partner that feels disempowered, and that can be even sometimes that a person is dominant in their sexuality because they need to heal. That's not their authentic kink, or even if that's authentic kink, they need to heal the issue around power, that they feel like the power that they feel over the person in sexuality, even if it's discussed and so on and so forth, the inner intimacy issues. And once the person was beginning to work with that, okay, and with the genitals, regardless of the type, or even if somebody has like intersex, then both like the vagina and the penis, they would have the sections that are associated with the liver, the the kidneys, the heart, and so on. And it's going upside down. So for the vagina, the upper parts are to do, the closer to the womb parts are to do with the heart, and then down the internal organs. And for the penis, basically the top of the penis. So when they do genitalia mutilation, they basically disconnect the meridians, okay? Because basically that little head is supposed to be connected to. It's kind of like the male clitoris is connected to the heart. And so. And there are ways to kind of like recreate that and so on, and still the top of the penis is connected to the heart. But this is like harming the heart. Okay, it's basically malefic solar magic that's done in a ritual, and basically clearing the energy around these meridians, also through the genitals, clears some deep traumas. And the people that did that experienced suddenly the welfare working for them, the welfare being in their favor, the welfare suddenly safeguarding them. And this was, and I was targeted, of course, for for that too, because even when I was targeted, I was in between houses. I literally heard like the people, the communicators say, this person got the welfare working for people. Okay, like that's, and they wanted to recruit me to the other side, but my recruitment abilities only work for the light. That's the thing. I would what would happen is in these quasi mafiosi governmental whatnot echelons, I would simply expose the problems that the people themselves deal with that are connected to to what they do, and so um, and that are connected to the structure of the treason cults and so on and so forth. So basically, I would uncover the curses that happen there. And so this is a topic that I just wanted to put out there, um, because that is, yeah, that is just that's what I have to say, you know. that's basically that's basically what I have to say. Um, and this is exactly where, um, anytime they'll try to recruit me not in favor of the light, that there would be a light twist on that. That would expose the entire damn fuckery. Um, More things to do with the children. Yeah, extortion cults. Um, the children are used in the wealth consolidation as trafficked children, mind controlled children. And again, listen to Annika Luka's testimony, because she's been one of those children. And that, you know, and the classified projects is how people would infiltrate every single sector, okay? And that jurisdiction, of course, is not exempt from having somebody that has to keep the tape of everybody, so they are so that they can extort people, and then they extort people to do certain stuff, and this is how you get dysfunctional lawyers. Okay, to defend the pedos. And again, every person deserves of a legal defense, but that legal defense can't be the Me Too went too far. What was she wearing? What was that's people that try to how should it do dark rituals around somebody's voice. This is what happens in the end. In the end, they're going to hit the Me Too went too far. Don't target individuals. It doesn't it doesn't paint a pretty picture of those who target. Um, and yet, people like Alandra probably had tapes of them like raping children, because that was a part of what they were. They were groomed to be an Epstein. Came out as a satanic ritual abuse survivor, not even a whistleblower. Satanic ritual abuse survivor told his story, and I think nobody's thinking to litigate Alandra, okay, for those things, um, because the structure behind that is the issue, um, and that's something important for the people that are under those extortion cults. I know Elizabeth April addressed that briefly. When they come out as whistleblower, they're either assassinated or forced back into the cult. When they come out as survivor, it's a different narrative. Okay, and I don't know why exactly is it so, because whistleblower is a different legal protection than survivor, and that may be a point of interference. But again, for people, you know, they have to look into that themselves, because I don't know all the legalities and all the implications. But to come out as a survivor is different than to come out as a whistleblower. and to comment as a survivor on a holistic level addressed where the person was violated and had to violate as a part of the cult. And yes, those people, I know Peggy Van Roy, was threatened to her life, so much so that I even has like, they were even almost like telling me that she was dead, and like at the time probably when she was abused, they thought that she was dead, and then she's still suffering. And she was on Annika Lucas' show. And Peggy Van Roy really addressed the fact. Peggy Van Roy helped me help other people, because she addressed the fact that in the rituals they had to perpetuate a rape and ritual abuse to other children, and that helped me when there was a case of another survivor that was talking. They were naming names, and those names were quite famous. Um, then it helped me to kind of like hate with the people that went through, because I would see it coming against them. Like, instead of that being used against them, I was like, wait, I remember you told me those people that violated you, they were also violated, and I know that in the rituals, the physical rituals, I have to violate other people, and indeed, told me that was the case. And when he addressed that, suddenly there was a shift. There was this tremendous trigger. There was a shift, and both political assassination was prevented, because it was from the same village of one of the politicians, and also the hospital couldn't hold stuff against them, and there was healing in the assistance of psychedelics there, so I guess they took it. I know that there is a lawyer that protected babysitting, and she tried to talk about psychedelics in favor of healing, and indeed MDMA can be used to give to people that rape children to camera, and it can be used in different settings to curate from ritual abuse. So this is where I know, now I got it, because this is where the drug cartels, they had to work with the dark occult so that people will not heal, which further complicated the drug cartels. Um, and then if the drugs are used to traffic people, or if the cartel or the mafiosi organization is used to also traffic people, they don't have the divine protection. No matter other what God, whether it's Satan, whether it's Archangel Michael, they don't have the divine protection. And this is because whatever they call the divine protection is basically the frequency of light. Even without any God, it's just being in the light. And when they do sexual boundary violation or contribute to that, they basically not being in the light, and there would not be divine protection for the business, because the business is being used, okay, not in the light. Um, and for example, for me, um, there was attempt to make my business to be used not in the light, but because I do aromatherapy, and because I give the right, because I do it in the light, then it was very difficult, and eventually they had to target me as an individual, because they couldn't get my business to work, basically with those quasi mafia, quasi intelligence organizations, um, and yeah, so. So there was attempt to get me to buy fake oils to corrupt the oils, or there was even some things that I was tortured to do something that was disgusting when I was making a body butter for myself. Um, and then it was really funny, because I used it for myself, and then somebody was asking me about it, so I let them use that, and I forgot. Okay, what happened, and then I was like really angry about me being isolated, and then I was like, wait a second, why does this person do so that people like me won't be raped? Hey, does this person believe that it's okay to rape women, and so on and so forth? So this is exactly to what degree they would go, because if they can't get me to rape a child, they would try to get me to do um, uh, um, they would try to get me my business to be corrupt in some fashion, so they would only leave the businesses that are corrupt, and that is really and in that way they could extort a person, because if a person's running a business and haven't faced something, then they would use that as a card of extortion. And so for me, it was just like, well, probably I'm meant to do something even bigger and better with my life and look deeper into what am I meant to do for a living and so on. And that is, yes, that's exactly those things, because on a certain level they began to do that to me. Then I know how the behind the scenes operates, and it's by torture and mind control, okay? And basically, uh, recovery from sexual boundary violation is the core issue of that embodiment that that preserves also ethics in business, ethics in research. Um, that's the core issue. Without that is nothing. There's no sovereignty without sexual sovereignty. It's just simple as that. They violate sexual sovereignty to violate sovereignty. Simple as that. Any person that either studied any type of tantra or any type of anything know that how the voice is important, how how those things, and those people that violate that, then, and if even if a person is being trafficked and so on and so forth, then it's basically attacking the attacker, and fighting for that sexual sovereignty. And I know that. I mean, I couldn't make it up, because all I really wanted was to reconnect with my sexuality, have good orgasms that are indeed my own intimacy, not a mind control, not an interference. And the amount of perils I have to fight for something is so simple, just showed that I could not have made, like, there would be no reason anything would have objection to me just living my life, manifesting my abundance and so on and so forth. There would be no way on earth that anybody would have objection to me doing that, other than the fact that that threatens attempts to violate sovereignty of entire humanity. And people like me are a key figure, because everything I do because of that turns into gold, because I work for sexual sovereignty. Everything I touch on turns into gold. Whether it was political assassination prevention, by chance I prevented political assassination. Whether it was every single project that I worked on, whether it was a person that was, taking the teaching of the courses and just adapting them. And it was not even done professionally. It was just done like a friend talking to me. And, we try to work together on ways to refine that teaching so that that practice will also be viable to them. And then they would develop their own healing method, because they discovered the connection between grief and sexual violation. Um, and then that person was basically saved from being murdered, and had even the welfare going for them, and that drew the attention of literally the entire intelligence. And I'm like, Falcon, sexual sovereignty. With sexual sovereignty, we actually have intelligence. Without that, all we have is economic hitmanship, fragmented souls, wars upon wars, treason upon treason, and the best you could get to is being an algorithis. Not oil, nothing would stop anything from that person being locked up. That's the truth. That's the truth. And any person that would tend to their own sexual sovereignty, even in self pleasure, would begin to see that everything they touch turns into gold. It's their own, because it's their own originality. It doesn't matter if they were cloned. It doesn't matter if they had rituals going through them. And I see it upon people. They begin to heal. Everything they do turns into gold. Whether it's and you know what? I even ran into a video that it was given the exact instructions, and I'm going to show you that, on where to find gold. I'm not kidding. And those videos are interesting, because people like living in Iran, if they would try to mine for gold, and this is the ethical mining, because without mercury, without any of the pollution, this lady is also fantastic, closing the gap. Love her stuff. I'm still listening to her stuff, because she was like this combatant person and she's transmuting the energy around gang stalking. So that's something like I still need to listen to more of her videos. Um, and these are basically success. Okay, it's basically transmuting the challenges to our success. Um, but that I want to see if I can have this gold video that I wanted to show you. This is about the Muslim Brotherhood of Satan. Um, that's the gold ESG Pro, and they give tips. This particular on how to find gold, where to find gold. And I tell you to find gold in oppressive regimes like Saudi Arabia, like Iran, and so on. What the community needs is to honor the sexual sovereignty of people and to, of course, honor the children, okay, not to marry children, um, child rights, and so on, to believe the crazy people and treat them well, and to make sure that the disabled people are being assisted and believed. If they say, oh, this medication is not for me, the patient knows best, okay? When a person goes to the ER, there are 1,500 possible diagnoses per symptom. And this was a part of my thesis, that the doctors that are good in diagnosing what's the right thing in the ER, they're basically channelers. In fact, in China, this was used to have the Röntgen site of children to basically diagnose patients. Um, so, but to find gold and to mine the gold, because the gold needs to be in the hand of the people. But the people can't be like the bank. They can't be oppressive like the bank to have the gold and silver in their hands. This is why a lot of people are like, they don't want me to have gold and silver because it's easier to, but those metals are actually protective and they don't want people to have them because they want to target them and to violate their personality. And for me, I did not buy rocks, I did not buy jewelries until I was going through this, actually during my first degree, I was going through this crystal shop, and basically I just for the record, because I was addicted to coffee because I didn't have money to buy food, and there was just this little pebbles. There was like, this is frequency of low, this is that, and for me I was like, okay, if I hold these rocks and like a little child, I just look at them and play with them, then I have something to think about other than food because I was hungry, but I would have not enough money to buy food. And then I actually began to feel the healing frequencies of these rocks. I even remember I slept next to a malachite that got polluted. And when it got polluted, I had bad dreams. And then I was like fixing my bed and finding this malachite, and I took it away from me to cleanse. And then basically I slept well, and I'm like, okay, that works. And this is where I began to work with the rocks to try to heal myself. And now later I would learn about the Spain silver crisis. So I bought myself some stuff with silver, and one of them, and by chance they had one had a peridot, and the other an opalite. So sun related stone and moon related stone, basically by chance. And the bracelet, it was basically, I lost the ring, it was missing. Later my cat would find it, and my mother, and then I asked for my mom, I want the money that I dedicated, which is good I remember that because I need to give it that I need to give her back that money next month. Just the money was not a lot of money. It was 200 shekels with the Moadon, with the like card that they have. So it was basically around $50. And I said, okay, even just one more $50, because I want to have silver on me, and that was the reason. Okay, I just wanted to have the metal silver on me to protect, because that metal, when I was putting the ring on, then basically I could literally hear the people try to target me through MK often, saying that butters what I'm trying to do to that person. And I'm like, what? Why on earth would they be saying that? Why does it bother? Like, okay, they want to confiscate wealth, but why does the ring and the crystals matter? And this is because those are healing and preventing from the fragmentation of the personality. And they try to make it look, they tried to send the rape through those metals, and then I would hold out those metals and they would stop the rape. So they really, really tried for me to take off those jewelries, and I'm like, no. And then the bracelet happened to be, I was looking for like another ring and stuff like that. Then I saw this bracelet, like, oh my god, that's so beautiful. And she told me that is silver, but with a coating of rose gold. And rose gold is basically a combination of copper, Venus, gold, sun, and moon, which is silver. And basically, I have sun ruled by Venus and the moon in Cancer. So basically, the silver would be the metal of the moon, the gold, the metal of the sun, infused with copper. And I was just, for me, the first reason I was taking that bracelet was like, hey, first of all, it's like really, really beautiful. The color was really beautiful. And that's how the crystals came back to my life, through the metals. So for people to find the metals and the crystal, people that want to get a hold of these metals and crystals and so on and so forth, is like, well, you gotta honor sexual sovereignty. If you're traffickers and you just try to get at the metals, they will be stolen from you. Extortion, they are the programming of the people that are meant to kill the handlers. So they would kill the handlers, and but if that's where, trying to attack the light gets people attacked, assassinated, and so on and so forth. But the people that want to get a hold of the metals and fight oppressive regimes, they have to stand for sexual sovereignty. And look, when I saw this gold video, basically the countries that had this problem were the Arab countries, okay, whether it's Iran, whether it's Saudi Arabia, whether it's, and those people had a problem to get a hold of the gold because they needed to, and basically what they need to do to get the gold is the things that would antidote the oppression of the regime. That's basically a satanic cult. Mid-heaven moon, Magha Nakshatra, sun hour. This is where the gold is. People don't like it, but you can't change the truth. You should just stand for the truth. Anyway, and here's the thing: when people do weird things to get somebody attention in a way that is negative, the attention that they're going to get is going to be negative. So I'll just let this ascendant cross the 18th degree of Scorpio. 2 more minutes. But this is, but I literally got a teaching on how to find gold. It was one of the best teachings. Hey, sexual sovereignty. There's no way around that. Sexual sovereignty. Do not insist of me to. Soul hour. I talked about that Nato mishap yesterday. Is it something new?